and he was able to achieve it. I think is one of the most special things that you can like give your kids is like, you know, you can dream big and it is possible. It's not always easy, but if you put in the work, something that seems unattainable can be attainable.
Welcome to the Unapparent Podcast, the place that delivers deeply human stories about the unapparent truths of parenting. My name is Katia Reguero Lindor, and I am your host. We hope you enjoy the show. Hola, mi gente. Welcome to Season 5 of the Unapparent Podcast. This season, we are dedicating it to MLB couples who I admire, who are obviously parents, who lead chaotic lives within the baseball world. Parenting is chaotic for all of us, and I hope this season gives everyone a lens into what it's like to parent within this crazy baseball world. So expect lots of laughs and heart and just empathy as we walk this journey together. And, you know, there's going to be an episode with Kalina, so I know some people are going to find that very enjoyable. And additionally, Francisco and I will be discussing what it means to be parents of 3. So I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Unapparent Podcast. Today's parents on our Season 5 MLB special episodes are Tomás and Danielle Nido. They're good friends of ours. We know them from the Mets, but they've turned into, you know, out of baseball, really close friends, parents who I admire greatly. Danielle, my hat goes off to you, and I will say that repeatedly in this episode. You have 3 kids, and you do it all, and it's so seamless from the outside. Obviously, I know it comes with so many challenges. So I just want you guys to, you know, introduce yourselves a little bit, talk about your journey within the MLB. But first, how did you two meet?
You wanna go? We met in high school in 2010. Or I guess, around 2010 turning into 2011. And, you know, we've been kind of on the life baseball mission since then. And we've been lucky enough that we were throughout the minor leagues together. So we got to see the same journey from the beginning, the good stuff, the not so good. And then we had some beautiful kids, and now we get to share some new experiences.
Yeah, we kind of have gone through being kids, being young adults, and now, you know, a family, which is kind of crazy we always talk about how it's funny thinking back on the versions of ourselves that we were when we met and all the journeys that we've kind of been through. And I feel like in the baseball world, especially, you live so many different lifetimes in such a small amount of time. So it's crazy to think that we've been together for, you know, over a decade, almost 15 years, 14 years.
Yeah.
And it feels like even longer.
Yeah, baseball does that, right? Because it's like our life is divided into the season and then the off season, and somehow it feels equally long and short when it's divided like that, right? Because it's like the challenges that come with it, and with kids, and when you add kids into the mix, they're multiple, right? And multifaceted. But then you look back and you're like, whoa, it's been 4 seasons already, you know, baseball with, you know, we have a 4-year-old now. So it's kind of that wild where we're like in a vortex, I call it, where it's just like baseball life is just, you know, it's one thing. And I feel like once we're out of it, life is going to look so different again. And it'll be like another lifetime, like you say, of just perspectives and different paces of life and the whole lifestyle, right? So for sure.
Honestly, it feels like every season's like a lifetime in itself, because it's just the spring training and the season rolls along, and then next thing you know, you haven't even really it hasn't been that much time, but it feels like you've done a billion things. And, every year brings its own mission and throws every curveball at you. So,
Pun
yeah,
intended.
sure. So, uh, yeah, quite literally every year feels like an eternity.
Yeah, I mean, especially, for you guys who you've moved already several times within the past, year or so, and switching teams is just so challenging also because that's another element of like, oh, the unknown, right? Especially with kids again, because one thing is, Tomas, you go and you experience a different team, of different franchise, but then Danielle also has to kind of relocate with the kids and figure out life with kids in a new city with new people. Can you walk us a little bit through what life the past few years has been for you and your MLB trajectory, Tomas, and then Danielle, you as his partner?
Yeah, to say the least, the past 2 years has been a lot of unexpected, quick changes. We have been with the Met, or had been with the Mets for my whole career, and then injury happens, and then things that you don't plan on, or just the business side of it happens, and you end up in a different situation that you have no control on. And I think that for the most part is the most difficult part of it all, where things change, and then any little thing that changed could potentially have that ripple effect that turns into changing the whole lifestyle drastically, where it went from getting injured to coming back, and then it kind of, I got DFA'd, and then it stayed with the Mets. So even though I was with the Mets, ended up going back to AAA, and then the move from New York to Syracuse. And I always say it would be a lot different if it was just me by myself. But with the kids, feels like you're just picking up everybody and moving them somewhere else and uprooting their life. And kudos to Danielle, because she just picked everything up and moved like it was nothing. And I feel like if it would have been the other way around, I would have been pouting and whatnot. And she just does it like it's just another task, and it's like, all right, well, here we go, we're going to Syracuse now. And so we ended up being in Syracuse for a little bit. Then season's done, we come home, we have a normal off season, and spring training rolls around. And I ended up kind of in a similar situation, going back to Syracuse. And then after, thankfully, a couple weeks, I was back in New York with you guys, and it all felt the same, normal. We're good to go. And sure enough, a couple months into it, I get moved, and I end up with the Cubs. So then that's in itself a whole ordeal, because we had actually just gone to London. So it was from going to London to coming back to finding out that, I was going to end up being with another team. And that itself, it's another mission, that, it feels like a quick thing when you look in hindsight, I guess. But, at the moment, the weeks, or even 1 week or 2 weeks, feels like it's been months. So you're just in the waiting game, and you don't really know what's gonna happen. And then you end up having to pick up, go somewhere else. And sure enough, it ended up being that we were playing against the Mets the first game. Uh, and then being with the Cubs for a few months, I unfortunately had the knee injury. And in the meantime of recovering, coming back, uh, the business side of it, how it works, I ended up getting in a situation where they kind of let me go, so I have an opportunity to go somewhere else, just because I was going to be a free agent anyway at the end of the year. And then it kind of goes to ends the year, and then we go to free agency from there. And so basically end up in three teams in 1 year, because I ended up signing with the Tigers at the end, to kind of show to myself that I was healthy. And thankfully for that one, my family stayed at home, so they didn't have to move for a third time. But in the middle of this whole thing, we were in Chicago, I have surgery, and we have to go do rehab in Arizona. So we did have to move a third time.
Moved 6 times last
Yeah,
year.
like 6 times.
I moved
Yeah.
6 times last year.
Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, I mean, for me, I have the, I guess you could say, the luxury of I have to go and uh go to the next place. But the tough part and the one I admire the most is that I have to go, but she has to stay back and kind of pick all the pieces and do everything. And having the backbone of the family, be able to do so many things along, like while having the kids with her. For me, that makes it a lot easier as a player. And as a person, for me, I feel terrible. I'm like, I'm leaving again, and I just have to, leave her back by herself, and it's not like she's getting help on the back. So that's the part that's tough as a player when you leave. We're all humans after all, and that's the beauty of the experience that we get to. That's special, but it's not the pretty side of baseball in general, because there's nothing fun about that.
Yes, and I know we moms talk a lot about mom guilt, if we, so much just leave our kids for a few hours, but then, dads feel the real, I think, dad guilt and partner guilt, right? I think I've heard of partner guilt a lot less, but it's also, I think, more real because you are cognizant of the burden that Danielle has, and that what she's having to deal with basically on her own. And so it's kind of out of your control. And at the same time, you wish that there was more maybe you could do in that aspect to help, but there's not. You gotta go when you gotta go,
Yeah.
So that's, I think, one of those elements that I don't think people consider that weighs on you as men, as humans, as individuals. You're not just like a robot, just going through the movements. It's, life happens and you kind of have to roll with the punches, but it doesn't take away, the difficulties and on all of the emotional challenges that come along with that.
Right.
So, I mean, sure, Danielle, you can speak on that a lot also on your portion of the job.
Yeah, I mean, a good example of this was when he signed with Chicago. We had been at home for a week, and when he signed, he had an hour and a half before they had someone picking him up to take him to the airport. So like went from being, home for a week, like just hanging out and obviously hoping that something like this would happen, but it wasn't like, okay, then you're gonna like hop on a flight tomorrow morning, whatever. It was like, no, you've got an hour and a half to be at the airport, and like life changed, in that moment. And like, because I mean, luckily I have, Tomas and I were together before he even got signed. So like I've been through the whole journey of baseball, and like I went from, I was in college, so I would like go and visit him for like a week in the summer, or a couple times, like a week at a time. Um so I kind of understood, like I knew his time and what he was having to commit to this and whatever, but it wasn't until after I graduated college and I moved with him in 2015 to live with him full time through baseball. That was the first time I really got to see like firsthand what the schedule's like, what the time demands are like all day and stuff. And so it was even though I knew it was, he was doing, living it was a completely different thing. And until you like really live it, it's really hard to fully like grasp what all kind of, entails, not only their, daily, like when they're at the field and all this stuff, but also like, going on a road trip and stuff. It's not like you end a game and then you're like in the next place, they have to travel there, and like people forget about all of like the logistics of that and like how much time that also takes and stuff. And so at least it was 5 years between, I started actually traveling with him full time to us having kids. And so I had a grasp on the lifestyle before we added children to it. And I think that aspect, I kind of already, and I'm very much I'm a planner. Like, I'm very type A. I research everything. I think about it to the nth degree. So before we had kids, I really thought about what life would look like once we added a child to that situation. And I think that helped a little bit because I kind of had a roadmap for what I could expect. And, I was aware that I was going to solo parent a lot. I knew what it was like to not go on road trips and have to stay home in a city that may not be like home and stuff. And that, it does have its challenges when you're alone, but it definitely like is an added thing when you have other humans you have to take care of, and you have nobody to kind of be able to have a little relief, like to you are everything, and you are you don't get a break.
Right.
You are
And you quite literally
100%.
don't, because you don't have like, a nanny, babysitter. Oftentimes in this lifestyle, it's common for, people to have kind of a helping hand, especially with, moving and all of those moving parts. And you don't. So that's like another reason why I'm like, whoa, Danielle's like my superhero.
Thank you. I mean
Quite
that
literally,
anytime
yes.
you ever say that, that literally is probably one of the best compliments you could, I feel like, give any mom. And likewise, I feel the same with all that you have on your plate as well, because it's not easy, and adding baseball life just makes momming even that much more
Thank you.
difficult.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that's something that where our experiences differ, right? When I started dating Francisco, I hadn't lived the full experience of baseball life without kids, right? I was sort of thrown into everything at once, where I'd also just gone and visited, and I knew what his day to day looked like, but I hadn't lived it. I hadn't lived the full experience of what a season, off season, and spring training looked like. And then I did it for the first time while having a newborn, and so that was just like so many challenges at once that kind of were just so overwhelming. And now, in retrospect, I can say that I've really put, I dealt with a lot more than I give myself credit for, because everything was new, right? Like new
Mhm.
mom, a new lifestyle, new places, new cities, new people, far away from my village, right? So it's like a lot of those things that go into it. But even when you kind of know what to expect, again, living it is just completely different from just like, oh yeah, I've lived this. But then adding little humans into the mix brings its own, unique challenges that you don't know until you experiencing it firsthand, right?
Yes. I know. I always like think about that, like how you were literally thrown into all of that, and like with a baby, being a mom for the first time. I mean, I commend you so much for handling all of that, because yeah, like I said, I was literally in baseball life, like immersed in it for 5 years prior, like, and it was still very hard.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
being a new mom is no walk in the park for sure.
For sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. Hey, just popping in to say thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts would mean the world. It helps us so much, and as a bonus, you'll also get a chance to win some exclusive merch like this sweatshirt I'm wearing. Now, back to the episode. So I think we've alluded to it, but are there any like specific challenges that we haven't talked about, that you guys have experienced about raising kids in this MLB lifestyle? For either of you, you can take on this question.
I think for the most part, we have been blessed that, having other teammates, that have, whether like in 22 with you guys, Kana, I can't remember off the top of my head, but we have so many players with very similar life situations, whether kids were around the same age. And, you know, for the kids more than anything, to have people that are kind of going through the same thing. And I think those are like, it's a blessing when you have it, and it's kind of a tough experience when you don't. And, you know, you're kind of rolling through the punches by yourself with nobody really to understand. So I feel like we were very blessed in 22, even 23, and in general to have friends, you know, that are going through the same thing. But that's another part that people, I feel like, don't realize is a lot of the times the kids are just kind of being dragged along, and they're just rolling with the punches as well.
I feel like they learn to, I mean, kids are resilient, right? But they kind of just learn a different kind of
Yeah.
resilience that we maybe take for granted because, yeah, we just bring them along for the ride. And hopefully at the end of the day, it's going to make them stronger, better people, like humans for it. But, you know, it must be hard for a little kid also to explain to them, like when you guys left, Eleni
Yeah.
was, you know, Kalina's best friend on the team. I mean, still is, but at the time, her best friend on the team. And it was one of those things where explaining to a 3-year-old that her best friend's not coming back to
Yeah.
the team, you know, that's hard. And it like tugs on your like mama heart to have to like explain that to them in a way that they grasp that it's not that she's not your friend anymore. It's just that she's physically, you know, distanced.
I'll never
Yeah.
forget when my mom called. She's like, "Oh my God, Delaney and Kalina,
That was
That was,
literally like
yeah.
her
they'll be
first.
okay."
That was her first thought was when, yeah, when we were with the Cubs was, oh my gosh, like they're losing each other. And I was, you know, life ends up happening, and, you know, now we live close to you guys, and now we
Yes.
get to spend off season
Yeah.
together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, you know, always a silver lining when you know, choose to see it that way. But thankfully we've had that, you know, that blessing that in the off season, we're going to be neighbors. So that's exciting. You know, it's something that they're always going to look forward to in the off season, I think. So, um,
1000%.
yeah, but that's, you know, one of those elements of parenting within the baseball world that, you know, we kind of lose friends on teams. And I think it's so rare to connect on a deep level, at least for us moms, with people, you know, you become acquainted and friendly with people because we're kind of living the same lifestyle. But at least for me as an adult and as a mom, it's harder to make like deeper connections of like friends that are really friends outside of the baseball world. And then you make those and then they move to a different team and then you're like, okay, all over again, you know. That happens for all of us, right? For teammates, for us partners, and for the kids. So that's hard.
Yeah. And I will say though that like seeing Elaney just thrive in, like when we went to the Cubs, like she didn't know where we were. I think, no, I don't think she'd ever been to Chicago before, but literally like the very first day in the stands, she immediately makes friends with some of the kids. Like it was like, you know, wasn't scared to walk up to anybody. Like just like I felt like she was like helping me make friends because she was the one introducing herself to the kids, and then I was like, oh, like hi, like I'm Elaine's mom, like, you know, like it was wild to me to see her like kind of blossom in that kind of way at such a young age, like being 3, and just, you know, not. I think that that is like a beautiful thing about baseball life is that them growing up in this, they get a different kind of socialization than, you know, maybe they would have being in the same place all the time. Maybe if they were in school, being around only kids their age. Like this way, you know, kids are all different ages on the team and they're all interacting with each other. They all have some kind of common ground because they're all living this lifestyle, but like all different ages. And, you know, it's really cool to see how, you know, the kids all
Interact,
kind of
right?
interact. Yeah.
Yeah, it is that is something I've always also seen, and I'm like, that's so good, you know. And I was homeschooled, so I didn't have like a group of friends in school, and I had friends all different ages, like from, you know, all different backgrounds. And so it is cool to see how that's just what they know, right? Oh, well, she's not my age, but I'm gonna go play with her, and it's cute to see older kids also taking on the role of like, oh, you know, we're gonna play with her, but we're also like looking out for her because they're like younger kids, you know.
Right.
That's really cute when you see that.
No, for sure.
So since you guys have obviously you have 3 kids, I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning. So 4-year-old, almost 2-year-old, and then
Yep.
a
3
newborn,
months.
3 months old.
Yep.
So, woo, we're in it. I'm about to be in it also with a newborn, but that's something that people always say, oh, you know, after the second, it's kind of just like one more. And I'm like, one more sounds like a lot, feels like a lot. How has that transition into, you know, from 2 to 3 gone for you guys so far?
I mean, luckily, our third Evie is an angel, an absolute angel. Like, she is the easiest newborn ever, and I think that that definitely has like shaped our experience. You know, Noah was also our second, was also a pretty easy baby. Eleni was a very tough newborn. So going from our first experience with a very tough newborn into like an easy newborn, I think really helped that transition. And then same with like this one, like having a baby that likes to sleep and doesn't like to cry and, you know, is very content and stuff. I think that that's definitely shaped the way that we've been able to handle 2 to 3. Like, yes, it is definitely still hard because you're having to split your attention 3 different ways, and you have 3 different age groups that all 3 of them need completely different. They all have their different needs, you know? Like, of course, when Evie needs to be taking a nap, Eleni all of a sudden wants 10,000 snacks and wants, you know, I can't just like sit down and like, you know, breastfeed. And, you know, I'm usually like walking around with her while I'm feeding her and doing a task for one. The other one wants to color. This one wants to, you know, some apple juice or whatever. You know, it is still like a hard, it's hard to feel like you're splitting yourself and like need 8 arms. But definitely I cannot complain because I think that our transition has been as seamless as you could hope, as I could hope. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she makes it seem way easier.
Oh, I know.
Because
She
she has
makes
the
it seem
patience.
way too easy. Her patience
Because
is what I envy the most in life.
yeah, it's incredible. I'm like, just how? And I'll never forget, it was the day we were going to the hospital, and I was changing Noah's diaper, and I just thought to myself, I'm like, wow, we're already halfway through this with Noah, and now we're gonna go, 10 steps back and start over. And I was like, that really put it into perspective. I'm like, wow, it's 2 years, we're rewinding and starting over. Well, we were almost there. And that was, I'm very thankful that Evie is such a saint. Um, but I guess for me, what had changed was, Noah was very attached to Danielle, and when we got back to the from the hospital, he got super attached to me, and that was kind of me getting to experience the him wanting to be all over me all the time, and then me having to do things. So I could only imagine her with everything that she's got going on, and every kid wanting to be on her. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think it was a little bit of a change because the kids were finally starting to need me more or want me more. Where it was always like, mom this, mom that. And I was like, all right, well, they want you, they don't want me. And then all of a sudden they're like asking for me. And I'm like, oof, my help hasn't been needed this whole time.
Yeah.
I did obviously do my part, but my needs were not required as efficient or as much as Danielle's were.
Yeah, you
So,
became like their
uh,
person, their go-to.
yeah, Noah's for sure.
Hmm.
Eleni has been great. She's very kind of self,
They're so much more independent now, you
yeah,
know. So
very
like,
independent.
Hmm.
And she understands kind of when she needs to get her own stuff, things, and she'll bring it and we'll help her. And, that's been a huge help. And then Noah, she's like, I don't care, just help me now.
Yeah, she's a toddler.
Um, yeah.
toddler, zero
So.
patience, zero,
Whew,
I'm like,
understanding.
this guy
yes.
just doesn't care about me. So, uh, yeah,
Yeah,
but
I've always
it's
said, yeah, newborn, I could take like 5 newborns, but do not give me another toddler because I will go
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I'm like, this guy has no feelings towards me. He just doesn't care. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
do it now.
Hmm.
But it's the best, when I think like we always talk about this, and Danielle would tell me this at the beginning when I'm like, this is so hard. She would say, just remember that at some point they're not going to be this, they're not going to be that. You're going to wish they've done this. And it is true. I am always thinking, I'm like, I'm just rolling with the punches. At some point, I don't know how I will miss this.
Hmm.
But so I try to think about it that way, and it does change the perspective on things a lot, um, and it kind of makes you appreciate kind of the good and the bad.
Yeah, I feel like that's maybe a coping mechanism I have to use as well, where I'm like, okay, this is just a phase, right? Like there are some phases that are harder than others. They're all challenging their own ways, but for different personalities, like Francisco thrives in the toddler stage with the girls, and that is where I am just like I cannot take another moment of this, you know. And I think just our brains just function differently. I think Tomas and I might be a little more similar in that. I think Francisco and Danielle have sort of some kind of even
Yeah,
keeled blessing that they can take on that
yeah,
toddler phase a little better. Um, but it just drives me bonkers, right? This
yeah.
overstimulation, the constant like whining and crying, and everything is the end of the world. You cut their sandwich wrong and it's like a tantrum, and you picked out the wrong clothes and it's a tantrum. And I'm just like, get over it, like. But it's a phase, but at the
Yeah.
same time I think being able to acknowledge and really accept like this sucks, and maybe I won't miss this. Like I will miss them being little and tender and cuddly for sure, but I won't miss these hard parts maybe, and I think that's okay to also be able to say it's hard. It feels hard because it is hard, and it is hard. I think all across the board, but I think embracing that duality where like, yes, I'm going to miss them when they're little. I love my kids. I wouldn't change it for the world, but this fucking sucks right now. Like it
Yeah.
really
Mhm.
does. So
Well,
Yeah.
that's
that's
definitely
me.
the reality of it for sure. No,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think I think in general, I just with the patience part of it, yes, it is definitely hard, and it's gotten it the toddler stage does make it a lot harder. Um, but I guess that's just my personality. I think one of the big things that I did like in my own like self work prior to having kids was just I really wanted to understand parenting in a different way than the way that I was parented. And I think that that is the biggest thing for me that helped me to maybe understand where they're coming from. Like, I think understanding that like everything is new, like they are this like clean slate, like they come into this world knowing nothing. They don't know what's going on. And especially like our lifestyle of all the craziness that we do throw at them, the fact that, like I said, like last year we moved 6 different times. We had, 6 different places that we lived, and they just had to roll with it. Like, I think myself just being able to maybe put myself in their shoes, I think is the thing that has
For
helped
sure.
me to have more patient.
There'll be times I'm like, this dude is doing it on purpose. He's just trying to piss me off.
And I have to remind him, I'm like, no, he's 2. He literally is not trying to get on your nerves. Like
he knows he's gonna get a rise out of me. He's gonna do it. I know.
It seems like
I
it
think
at
that's
times, but yeah, they obviously don't. They don't do things with those intentions.
Yeah, I'm like, there's no way he's about to just turn that juice over and just spill it. And he just
in my face as I'm telling him no. They're just like,
wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we have like conversations us two about of like, you know, because obviously, like I said earlier that I very much like go into things like fully researched and like try to like become like an expert on something before I like make a decision. And so like that was like such a big part of becoming a parent was that I wanted to really like understand myself and my own traumas and whatever and like things that at the end of the day I feel like a lot of those like triggers that happen to you as a parent, like to Tomas, like to myself, are things that like are a trigger from our own childhoods, like, you know, where we maybe weren't able to express ourselves that way, or we're like, you know, oh, you need to stop crying or whatever, like things like that, where I had to really like dig deep and be like, okay, just because like that was done to me, maybe that's not the best way to like handle this situation.
the
And that's
reparenting, right? That's so much of the work
right.
that we do as parents. We reparent and we try not to pass on the traumas and maybe the things that we wish had been done differently for us. But it's so interesting how we sometimes fall into the same patterns that we knew we didn't like when we were kids, right? And it's really hard work for us as individuals
Yeah.
and as parents, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a ongoing thing. I mean, you're never going to get it perfect. And I'll even catch myself and I'm like, you know, just having to apologize or, you know, and that's something too that I'm like, I don't remember being apologized to, like if my parent like lost their temper or whatever. And I'm like, that in and of itself right there, like just is a completely different situation. You know, we're all human.
Right.
We're all gonna make mistakes.
Yes, and the reparation, I think, is what you're saying is just so important because you can't undo things, but you can definitely teach them, okay, you know, mom and dad were not perfect, and show the humility of apologizing and repairing what maybe, you know, was broken. And kids are just so forgiving. I think just really opening up that what's naturally there, you know, that you know, big heart and forgiveness, and they teach us so much, right? With everything you said about, you know, Lenny, like making friends easily and just kind of like accepting the changes, and because they are blank slates, they're not projecting their fears and what they think is going to happen beforehand, and they kind of just accept things as they come and they forgive, and so much to be learned from children.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, before we culminate this episode, I want to do some rapid fire questions, and you guys can just point at whoever you think is the answer to these questions. So, who is the stricter parent?
Yeah.
Tomas.
Me, for sure.
Who's better at calming a tantrum?
Me.
Who's the first to say yes to screen time?
Him.
Yeah.
For sure.
Who's more likely to give in during a negotiation with kids?
Yeah, me.
Really?
Right after she said no, with
But
a nice little sweet smile and a please, they win.
Well, you're good. You're still a more fun parent than me then, probably. Who's the funnier parent?
Tomas, for sure.
And who has a harder time saying no to the kids?
Me, for sure.
I'm handing them out like it's a, you get one, you get one.
I mean, I think Tomas, we're Puerto Rican. I think that might have something to do, right? We were raised in Puerto
Yeah.
Rican households.
Out of my own experience,
Yeah.
out of my own experience, I know how to
Say no.
say no.
Yeah.
I was told no plenty of times.
Oh yeah, same here. Who's the kid's favorite when they're sick?
Me.
Mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's more likely to cry at a school play or milestone event?
Me.
Same. Well, I have one last question, and either of you or both can answer, right? But what's one thing that you hope your kids will learn from your MLB journey?
I would say, how unique and special it is to be able to be in that situation, whether it's good or bad. It really is pretty special how you just get to be somewhere every 3 days. Literally, it doesn't matter whether it's minor leagues, whether it's the big leagues, there's people in the world who would give everything they have to get to do it for one day. And they get to do it because they were born into it. And you meet amazing people along the way. Yeah, at times it's not pretty and it's not fun, but in the grand scheme of things, the I always say this, and I think every baseball player says this, especially when you're in the big leagues for a long time and you start maybe taking one thing for granted or the other.
Getting comfortable.
You get comfortable, and then you don't realize that when you were coming up in the minor leagues, you would literally do anything to be in the big leagues for one day. And, you're born into doing that every day. So that, I think it's kind of putting into perspective how special it is that we've been able to do this for multiple years in a row. And they've gotten to do it with friends, and with people they can share these adventures for a lifetime. So
And I think also, like, just to like piggyback off of that, is also like I want them to learn that, something that may seem like so unattainable, because this is like, a job that not everybody gets to do. It is such a small percentage of the world that, makes it to the big leagues, to know that that's possible, that like that they can dream big. Like this is the ultimate, like being able to see firsthand that something that like their dad worked his whole life, his whole childhood towards, and he was able to achieve it. I think is one of the most special things that you can like give your kids, is like, you can dream big and it is possible. It's not always, it's not easy, but if you put in the work, something that seems unattainable can be attainable.
And it takes a village and a whole team, right? So
yeah,
I think you guys are such an amazing team as parents, and in this crazy MLB life. So I thank you so much for your time. Clearly, you guys are very busy, so it means so much to me that you are willing to come on the show. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for thinking of us.
Thank you for listening to the Unapparent Podcast, produced by Studio Dama and hosted by me, Katia Lindor. If you like what you heard, subscribe or follow us on social media and tune in as we share deeply human stories about the unapparent truths of parenting.